You picked the option that I didn't have any footage recorded for. Well, you might be saying, well, Darkness, you get to play Mega Man games again. And yes, and that's great. I love Mega Man. I have to play all of them. Again. Why do you hate me?
It makes me question why!
Now, I joke, but admittedly, there are worse things than having to play all the Mega Man games again, because, believe it or not, I am probably one of the biggest Mega Man fans you will ever meet, which is weird. And I only say it's weird because it dawned on me just how little I've really addressed the series over the years. And I'm not really sure why that wound up being that way. Like, I guess on a lot of levels, like, I've always been known as the Sonic guy and then eventually the Tomb Raider guy. You know, both of those things. And I'm like, but why haven't I really addressed Mega Man? Part of it is because anytime I have to deal with that fan base, and much like having to deal with the Sonic fan base, that's an alarming thing to deal with at any time. I just don't want to do it. I don't want to do it! But the other reason is, when I went to actually start planning this video, I realized part of my issue with talking about Mega Man is I'm an odd duck when it comes to Mega Man. Most people that talk about it have been there since the beginning. You know, really big fans have been there from the start, back in the 80s. The original Mega Man, Mega Man 2, 3, 4, 5, all on the NES, yes. Absolute masterful games that, you know, will never, ever be, you know, gotten close to in terms of their quality and awesomeness. Yeah, I don't agree with that at all, whatsoever, to be perfectly frank. Part of it's probably because I don't have the childhood nostalgia that many people have with Mega Man, because I didn't know about Mega Man for a fairly lengthy amount of time. It wasn't until I was about 7 years old, and mind you, I was born in 1990, so I was born after the original Mega Man came out. So, my first Mega Man game was not on the NES at all. Now, I owned an NES, but I never really played it, because Genesis does what Nintendo don't. And I never really had Mega Man. I didn't even know what Mega Man was until someone I went to school with mentioned Mega Man. I'm like, what the heck is a Mega Man? And then I found out. And instantly I was completely in love with the series because they are great, top-notch games. And the weird thing about Mega Man is that he's done so many different weird stuff. Like, a lot of the series have almost nothing in common beyond the name, but they're still good. And it's a rarity. Most game series have done pretty much the same thing over the course of their existences. Let's be real. In terms of overall concept, the Tomb Raider games are rarely any different. They're pretty much exactly the same. And in Sonic's case, well, he's done some different spin-off titles, but again, most of what he's done has been fairly similar overall. It's an anomaly to see a character do so many different things well enough that those different things spawn their own series in their own right. It's actually quite commendable for Mega Man to do that. Many people credit Keiji Inafune with creating Mega Man. That's not actually true. He was part of it, but they'd already kind of designed Mega Man before he even joined Capcom, by his own admission. Now, he has been responsible for the majority of the series in terms of the stories and certain character designs and a lot of elements. So for the most part, yeah, he was the one behind it before he left Capcom. But ultimately, we have a series here that's surprisingly complicated, and it also is very divisive, even within itself. Sonic fans are Sonic fans, and you know how I feel about them. They can be very, very, very frustrating to talk to sometimes. Especially if I bring up that I like Sonic Forces, which is apparently sacrilege these days, because you can't like anything on the internet. That's forbidden. But the weird thing about the Mega Man fanbase is that it tears itself apart on a very consistent basis based on which series everyone thinks is superior, or which is the true Mega Man series, or which one the actual fans should be rallying around. And everything about it. I guess it's part of the flaw when your series has done so many different things, but to see the kind of infighting I've seen on the internet when it comes to Mega Man is really, really kind of sad. Like, do you have to fight about it? Is it worth it? Why bother? I don't know. Anyway, getting on point, the retrospective. We're going to talk about the Mega Man series here, so we're going to cover a lot of games in a fairly condensed amount of time. So this is going to be a challenge because there's a lot of things to talk about when it comes to Mega Man. Naturally, this will be done in multiple parts because there's no way I can condense the entire franchise into 20 minutes. At least not in a reasonable way, not one that I would feel comfortable with. I thought of a lot of ways to do it, but the problem is, compared to the other retrospectives I've done, Mega Man, like I said, is weird because I didn't start with the series from the beginning. When it comes to Sonic, Tomb Raider, and Pokemon, well, I've pretty much been with those series since the start. Like, by all intents and purposes, I was there when those series first existed. Mega Man's not the case. My first Mega Man game was Mega Man Legends. Yeah, I know. Who the hell says that? Nobody says that, okay? I've never met anyone who says that was their first Mega Man game, but in my case, it's true. It's probably part of the reason why whenever someone complains about Legends, I kind of get irritated because, frankly, the Legends series is an excellent series and deserves respect. I'm not saying it's any better or worse than any of the other Mega Man series, and if you guys prefer others, actually, I do. There's one series that I think is better than Legends, just a little bit. That's fine. This isn't going to be a debate over which series you prefer. Because I think the most important thing about Mega Man is that there's so many options when it comes to him. You can recommend so many different games and they'll all be good. And I can't say that about a lot of things, especially when it comes to video games. You know what I mean? So because this is a personal retrospective, I've decided to break it down like this. I'm going to start with the first Mega Man game I ever played. Then I'm going to review that entire series that game happens to be in. So that makes sense. I didn't play the follow-ups to Legends second. I played a different game second, Mega Man X4, if you're curious. That'll be part 2. But because things are so divided when it comes to the series, it seemed really chaotic and nonsensical for me to just jump between different series based on the order I played them in. That didn't really make much sense from a cohesive standpoint. But because it's a personal retrospective, I have to address the whole series when I get to it. So we're gonna go in order of which series I played in order and cover the whole series, one at a time. So I hope that makes a lot of sense, because that's the best way I could break it down. Now, Mega Man Legends. What is the deal with Legends? Well, it's friggin' weird, and I will be the first to admit it. It's got a very unique control system. But in terms of concept, the closest I could probably compare it to is, believe it or not, Zelda on the N64. And in fact, a lot of the modern Zelda games. Those running around, going into dungeons, getting power-ups and things like that. It's very similar to that kind of Zelda-esque concept, except done with Mega Man. It's much more action-y than Zelda is, I would say, but it does have side quests and an open world to explore in. It's actually quite ambitious for a PlayStation game, and the art direction is absolutely fantastic. They went full anime with it, and because of that, because it's stylized so well, it actually holds up nowadays. Like, you can play the original Legends on PlayStation, and it still looks pretty good, especially by PlayStation standards, just because it has that anime look to it. It ages extremely well. That, and this is going to be a running theme when it comes to Mega Man games, but the music is absolutely fantastic. You've been listening to it this entire freaking video so far, so I hope you agree. As for overall concept, well, Legends does differ when it comes to most Mega Man games in a lot of ways. Mega Man is predominantly known for being side-scrolling platforming action games, and for the most part, the games are like that. Legends is a weird one because its series in particular specializes in 3D. Now, Legends is not the only game in the whole of Mega Man that did 3D, but it is the one series that is mostly known for doing that. In fact, its specific existence is tied to 3D. It was made whenever 3D was new on the scene, and they wanted to adapt Mega Man, but weren't really sure how to do it. So they did something odd, and created something wholly unique instead of adapting a side-scroller into a 3D game. Legends does not play like a 3D version of a Mega Man side-scroller. They didn't go Mario 64 with it. They made something wholly unique, and I think that was an interesting idea. It has some similarities when it comes to classic Mega Man games, but it also has a ton of differences. To begin with, the control scheme is friggin' weird. So effectively the controls work like this. Analog controls, you can use them. Don't actually do that. I don't care if you're playing the horrible Mega Man 64 version, which is Mega Man Legends but the on the 64, but they changed the name because it's the 64, and I hated that. It's not the superior version by any stretch. If you have to play it, don't play that one. Mega Man Legends PS1, basically, Mega Man controls on an X and Y axis as well as diagonal when it comes to the D-pad. He goes forward, backward, and side to side. And again, diagonal. Now you might be saying, well, how do you turn? Well, this is where things get weird. The L1 and R1 buttons, the shoulder buttons, actually rotate him. And this is an interesting and unique control system that I don't think I've ever even heard of another game utilizing. It's definitely unique to the Legends formula, and as weird as it sounds to say it, it actually works extremely well. It takes some getting used to, but when you do, you see what they were trying to do. To begin with, Legends doesn't have any freaking camera problems because the camera is always immediately behind Mega Man. This is great because a lot of 3D games, especially at the time, had a ton of trouble getting the camera down. And because it only has a handful of directions it can possibly go in, it works really well. In addition, going side to side and being able to use the shoulder buttons to rotate while you do that means circle strafing is not only easy, but highly effective against your opponents. There are a lot of fights. It's an action game. The game works so beautifully with such a unique system. It's pretty clear to me that when they were going about this, they didn't really know how to put Mega Man on a 3D plane like with Mario 64 or Crash Bandicoot or Spyro or any of the really good 3D games. They weren't really sure how to do it in a way that would be fun, so they tried to do something entirely different. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but in Legends' case, I think it did. It's unique, yeah, but it works. And it's really effective and makes for a really fun gameplay experience. From a mechanics perspective, there's a ton of power-ups to get for Mega Man, there's bosses to fight, dungeons to explore. The story is interesting, starting out with Mega Man and Roll, as well as Gramps, as they call him, crash landing on an island called Cadillac's Island. And the island is besieged by pirates, the Bonds, and you have to fight them off. But the plot actually evolves into the understanding the backstory of this Mega Man. See, it's funny, I'm starting the retrospective with Legends because Legends actually takes place last in the main Mega Man timeline. This is Mega Man Trigger. He is not the original Mega Man, nor is he Mega Man X. He's a different Mega Man entirely. We still don't know a lot about him in terms of how he was built, or created, or born, or however he works, because they never actually finished, to this date, the Legends series. So we still don't know a lot about him specifically. What we do know is that he was a first-class purifier unit tasked with tracking down aberrant units. According to the English translation, the Japanese translation said he was tracking down irregulars, which is directly tied into the X series. There are a lot of tie-ins here. In any event, the point is, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with Mega Man Trigger here. Although, he would call himself Mega Man Volnut because he took the name when he was found. And it's, like I said, it's part of the story. But the story's pretty good. The bonds are really funny. There's comedic moments, there's serious moments, there's sad moments. It's a really good experience overall. Exploring the dungeons is fun, finding keys, finding treasure chests, building new weapons. Mega Man has a ton of power-ups to get. Unlike most Mega Man games where Mega Man steals his opponent's power and uses it, this Mega Man doesn't do that. Instead, Roll constructs him new weapons to use on his other arm, and there's a ton of different options there. Though admittedly, I usually play the game without. I always just upgrade my Buster with Buster parts and go to town like that. Ultimately, it's a fun experience just wandering around exploring the town. Back in the 90s, this was awesome, especially for a PlayStation gamer who didn't have access to something like Zelda. And many Mega Man fans who aren't familiar with Legends are probably like, wait, you keep mentioning Roll. Roll is a name that's familiar because in the classic Mega Man series, there is also another Roll. This is a different role, which just happens to also be named Roll. And by the way, in Japanese, Mega Man is not called Mega Man, he's called Rockman. It's meant to be a reference to music. There's a lot of musical names in Mega Man. It's just a tradition. Rock and Roll. Get it? I adored Legends when I first played it. I asked my parents for it and everything so I could own a copy of it. I loved the game. I was suddenly interested in Mega Man. I wanted to know about the rest of the series. I knew nothing about it. But before we get into my second Mega Man experience, I had to finish up talking about the Legends series. Now the next game in the series is called The Misadventures of Tron Bonne. The Bonds were one of the villains from the Mega Man Legends, though they're kind of more anti-heroes overall, I would say. I mean, they're pirates, yeah, but they got some moral fiber. Like, they're not mass murderers or anything, and they're not the ultimate villains generally. So this was a spin-off that's technically a prequel to Legends, where you take on the role of Tron Bonne, who was a popular character from Legend. Basically, her older brother Teasel Bonne and her younger brother Bon Bon are kidnapped by this dude named Glide and his boss, Lex Loathe. Really? His name is Loathe? Really? Okay. Anyway, most of the game is centered around making enough money in order to get Teasel and Bon Bon back. See, they were kidnapped because they took a loan from a guy named Loathe because they're idiots. The game has a surprising amount of variety. There's a puzzle level where you steal shipping containers, there's a bank robbing level, there's a ton of stuff to do, and you can explore the Gesellschaft, the Bond's airship, and interact with the serve bots on board. This is a really fun game, and I would say I'm surprised not many people have played it, except that I'm not, because Misadventures of Tron Bonne is one of the rarest PlayStation games in existence, if not the rarest one. Really. Just the disc alone, I looked this up, on eBay goes for $250. A sealed, packaged version of this game goes for $2,500 for one game. Now I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, Darkness, if it's so rare, how did you have a copy of it? That is an excellent question. Where did I get this? In the original case, with the manual, with the disc, with the demo disc for Mega Man Legends 2 inside of it. The year 2000, Toys R Us, $20. There are some collectors watching this that are positively seething right now. It's only a coincidence this game became so rare. I guess I didn't expect many people to be excited for a spin-off for a game that not many people bought. Legends wasn't super popular or anything, but I guess they still authorized it anyway. It's a great game. It was available on the PS3's downloadable PSN service. I don't know if you can still get it there. I'm not sure that version's still up. I'm not sure it's available on PS4 at all. I don't know. Other than that, I guess you can go out and spend $250 for it's a really good game, I'll admit that. No, I'm not selling mine, don't ask. Anyway, moving swiftly past that, naturally, as I mentioned, there was a demo disc included with my copy of Misadventures of Tron Bonne, which includes Megamillions 2, which came out just a bit later. Legends 2, I gotta say, totally perfects the Legends formula. One of the big issues I have with both Legends and Tron Bonne when it comes to the controls is the lock-on me feature. Now, in the original Legends and Tron Bonne, there is an automatic lock-on, but there's also a manual lock-on. The problem with the manual is it's usually used for aerial enemies, but it forces you to stand still. It doesn't actually let you move and do it at the same time, and I'm not really sure why that is because it's a shoulder button. However, Legends 2 corrected this and made it so that you can move while you're locked on, and this completely changes the game. Suddenly, the feeling of freedom, of motion, of speed, of strafing maneuvers, it's all perfected in a glorious package. As opposed to Mega Man Legends where you can find one island, the plot now has you going across a fairly major opponent of the planet you're on called Terra. The result is that each and every dungeon of this game, there are 4 main ones, are wholly unique with a different theme and a different design overall. And there's a much larger focus on the dungeons, very akin to what I would say is a Zelda game. In essence, in that aspect, I think they kind of really got the Zelda formula nailed down when it comes to going into unique dungeons and doing unique things in each one and different challenges and different bosses to fight. It's a great experience overall. The control is solid, the plot is great, it has more to do with Mega Man's backstory, and the final boss is one of the toughest bosses in the whole of Mega Man. Mistress Sarah is a nightmare, and I'm gonna warn you that. But it's never unfair. It never feels like it's too much, like there's a ramp up to that level of difficulty. And this is something Mega Man usually is very good at. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, the series is known for being challenging, but still rewarding and fun at the same time. It's so good at that, and I do think Legends 2 really perfects that element. It's got some flaws. I really like the involvement you had when you were contained on catalogs in Legends 1. Like, you were so ingrained in that island's culture, and there were so many different things to do to improve the island wholly in terms of side quests and stuff. Legends 2 kind of falls a little short there, because not every area is as developed as catalogs was, because, well, you're not there as often. You have to go across the world. Makes sense. But it totally makes up for it with some great boss fights, awesome dungeons, and a ridiculously amazing plot that really, really shows what they were capable of when it comes to the Legends series. I think the music in Legends 2 is top-notch. Probably the best out of all three games, and the graphical styling is perfected here. They really pushed the PS1 to the max when it came to showing these anime-style visuals, and they hold up really well. I haven't optimized this footage at all. This is how the game looks when played on a PlayStation, and let's be fair, this still looks really good 20 years after this game was released. And now I get to make everyone sad, because since I'm talking about Legends, I have to talk about Legends 3. Or rather, the lack thereof. Back in 2009-2010, there were plans for a Legends 3. It was going to be a 3DS exclusive, if you can believe that. But everyone I knew who was invested was really excited for this. This is the conclusion to this plot. Legends 2 ends on a cliffhanger. I'll warn you about that right now. And there's still a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to Mega Man Trigger. In terms of his backstory, in terms of his purpose, everything that we don't know yet. We just don't know. We weren't told. Legends 3 is supposed to do that. Except, we never got Legends 3. The reason is fairly irritating. Keiji Inafune, the man responsible for a lot of things in Mega Man, wound up leaving Capcom in 2010. In retaliation, so it seems, Capcom canceled all the Mega Man projects that were currently in the works at that time. Legends 3 is included in that. This was a disaster for everyone who was excited about this game. Capcom tried to claim that there wasn't enough interest, but considering the epic, and I mean loud, angry responses from the internet at the time, I call complete crap on that. You had enough fans that you would have sold enough copies of this game to make a profit. Don't play the not enough interest crap with me, alright? It was a 3DS exclusive. The 3DS sold plenty. One of the best handhelds that's ever been made, in my opinion. And you think not enough people would buy this game that this fan base has been clamoring for a decade at that time, now 2 decades. It was just so disappointing. It was such a kick in the face to everyone who was excited for that game. And really, even Mega Man fans in general, because at that point, Capcom pretty much stopped making Mega Man games for years. And it really left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. Now, these days, we do have new Mega Man games coming out slowly, and they are showing an interest in making more, but will we ever get a Legends 3? I don't know, and I'm not sure I want one. At least not one that's, written by someone who isn't Keiji. Unless it's me, I'll do it. I'm just worried about the story. Like, Legends was really good about fleshing that out, and we want to make sure it ends on a good note, and, one that's satisfying for fans. So it really should be written by a fan. I volunteer. And I'm just afraid if they let some halfwit do it who doesn't really care, it's gonna be, just thrown out the window like Shenmue 3 was and be super disappointing, and nobody wants that. So you really need to get someone doing it who actually knows what they're talking about and is familiar with the lore. I'll do it! Please! Please, I already have a good idea for how to finish this series. Capcom! Come on! I will write it for free! Just please make the game! I know it sounds really dumb to get upset about a video game, and I get that. I'm too old for this. I really am. But we're talking about unsolved mysteries that have been there since I was 10 years old. It's been 20 years. I am 30. I just want to know how this story ends, and if I have to write it myself, I will. But I would need Capcom to let me do that. You know how they are. admittedly, in some aspects, Capcom has been doing a really good job lately. Resident Evil's been great, and DMC5 was awesome. So it's not like it's outside the realm of possibility that they could make a competent Mega Man game and risk making a Legends 3, especially since with the cancellation, it's actually gained more interest. More people who didn't know about the series have tried it since then, and now they're also included in a large group of people that's like, hey, 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 hey! Can you finish the story, please? Maybe they're afraid to do it because Keiji's no longer involved. He's too busy making terrible games. But, you know, you own the rights. Finish the story, at least to say you did it. Like I said, I'll do it. I've written 4 novels. Come on, let me try. Please? You're not watching this. It's okay. Anyway, even with the cliffhanger, the Legends games are amazing. They're great experiences, and I highly recommend if you haven't tried them, give them a shot. Next time, we'll get into the second series that I touched on Mega Man very soon after I first tried Legends. Mega Man X. 4 was the first that I played. But we'll talk about the whole series. Till next time, this is Darkness, individual Alphon, farewell.